Hi everybody, I want to talk to you today about ions, isotopes, and neutral atoms. So a little bit of review here, looking at a nuclear symbol. When you're given a nuclear symbol, the letter or letters is the element symbol. So here we have hydrogen. So this is element number 1. If you look at your periodic table, you'll see an H. The top number is the mass number. And if you remember from your atoms notes, the mass number is the protons plus the neutrons, because the protons and the neutrons have mass. Electrons do not have mass. The bottom number is the atomic number. And the atomic number is just the amount of protons in that particular element. So we have hydrogen, which has 1 proton, and hydrogen is the first element on the periodic table. So when you look at the periodic table, the top number in the box is the atomic number, and that's how many protons one atom of that element has in its nucleus. So just by sheer math, and I know you're probably thinking math in science. Remember, science is applied math. So how do we find the electrons then in this particular element? So if there was a charge on this element, there would be something over here. And we'll look at that in a little bit. But right now we can assume this is neutral. So the amount of electrons are going to equal the number of protons. So again, if we have 1 proton and this is a neutral atom because there's nothing up here, then our electrons are 1. So let's look at a couple other nuclear symbols. Here's a nuclear symbol for lithium. Lithium on the periodic table is right below hydrogen. It's element number 3. So we have the mass number of 6. We have the atomic number of 3. So 3 tells us the number of protons in lithium, in 1 atom of lithium, and 6 is the number of protons and neutrons in 1 atom of lithium. So if we have 3 protons of lithium, because that's our atomic number, remember atomic number is the number of protons, and our mass number is protons plus neutrons, then how many neutrons do we have in this atom of lithium? Well, we would have 3, because 6 minus 3 is 3. So again, 6 is protons and neutrons, 3 is protons. So if we subtract the protons out of the mass number, then we're left with neutrons. All right? What about this one? 16,8 oxygen. So our mass number is 16. Our atomic number is 8. So how many neutrons do we have here? We have 8, because 16 minus 8 is 8. Okay. This process is very, very important. If you do not understand this, stop the video now and go back over it. Moving on, let's start with our first A neutral atom is when protons equals the electrons. So in all of these examples, the electrons and protons are the same number because there's no charge. If there was a charge, we would call that an ion. And that's when protons don't equal electrons. If the protons are greater than the electrons, we have a cation, and this is when there is a positive charge on the ion. If the protons are less than the electrons, then we have an anion, and this is a negative ion, or the overall charge is negative of that particular atom. An isotope is when protons don't equal the neutrons. And this sometimes can be a little tricky because in a standard atom, there may be one or two more neutrons than protons. We'll do some of those examples. It's not always an even split of the same amount of protons and neutrons. All right, so let's look at some examples. Let's go back to our lithium atom. Our mass number, and I'm going to abbreviate that, is 6. Our atomic number is 3. So this is a good thing to get in the habit of, is writing out how many protons, how many neutrons, and how many electrons you have when you're given an example. So here, because our atomic number is 3, we have 3 protons. To find the number of neutrons, we simply subtract our atomic number from our mass number. So we have 3 neutrons. There's nothing here on our nuclear symbol, so we can assume we have 3 electrons because our atom is neutral. So we call this a neutral atom. What if we had the same atom of lithium, but this time we have a charge? And this is how we designate a charge. So this lithium ion has a +1 charge. So this means we have more protons than we have electrons. Okay? So again, let's put those up. Our atomic number is the same. We have 3, so that means we have 3 protons. We take our mass number, subtract out our atomic number, so we have 3 neutrons. But because we have a charge here, we do not have 3 electrons anymore. We only have 2. So let's look at that so you can understand why there is a +1 charge on here. So if I have 3 protons, each of those protons has a plus charge. And if I have 2 electrons, each of those has a minus or a negative charge. I can only have 2 because these are going to cancel each other out, and I'm left over with a +1 charge on the atom. So that's how you can figure out what your electrons are when you have a charge. So this is a positive ion, or we call that a cation. Let's look at an anion. Let's try this one. 18,9 fluorine with a -1 charge. Okay, so now we have a -1 charge. How many protons, neutrons, and electrons do we have? Here's our atomic number. That's always on the bottom. That tells us how many protons we have. So we have 9. Our neutrons, we subtract our mass number minus the atomic number. So we have 9 neutrons. And now we have a negative charge on our ion here. And because it's negative, that means we have more electrons than we do protons. So we have to have more than 9 electrons. And I can draw this out for you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 protons. So how many electrons am I going to have to get a -1 charge? 1, 2, 3. So those are going to cross out. 4, 5, 6. Those cross out. 7, 8, 9. 10 electrons because we have a -1 charge on that atom. So this is a negative ion or an anion. Okay, so that's how you do ions. Let's look at isotopes. Okay, so here we have nitrogen. We have 7 protons because our atomic number is 7. If we subtract that atomic number from the mass number, we have 8 neutrons. We don't have any charge, so we have 7 electrons. These two numbers do not equal, so now we have an isotope. All right. So your assignment today is you're going to get several nuclear symbols. You need to figure out the mass number, the atomic number, the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And then you need to determine if it's a neutral atom, an ion, or an isotope. Now, an atom cannot be a neutral atom and an ion. It either has a charge or it doesn't. Okay? But an atom can be an ion and an isotope. So what if I take this 15,7 nitrogen, because sometimes nitrogen likes to have a charge on it. Okay. Seven protons, 8 neutrons. Now we have a -3 charge. So now we have 3 more electrons than we have protons. So we're going to have 10 electrons, because 10 minus 7 is 3. So it's kind of interesting. So this is an ion, a negative ion, and it's also an isotope. It's a really interesting thing when you're figuring out the ions and how many electrons you have. You actually add electrons when it's a minus charge, and you subtract electrons from the protons when it's a plus charge. So it's opposite of what you think it might be. Alrighty, let me know if you have questions. Good luck.